All right, we're going to turn to Act 2, rather, sorry, of Hamlet and pick up on some of the same threads that we introduced and talked about in Act 1. So let's start with Hamlet's state of mind. And this is going to be a big thread in this particular act because there's a whole lot going on here that centers on Hamlet and his state of mind and really just identity in general. So let's pick up a couple of things that we touched on from Act 1 in discussing Hamlet's state of mind. The question of madness really becomes foregrounded in this particular act, and you can tell, I have probably from reading the act itself and watching the clips, that I have a question mark here after madness. And I guess one of the issues that is raised in this particular act is Hamlet truly mad, or is there something else going on that could be causing his erratic behavior, which definitely is evident in the scenes of this act. So we know from the beginning of this act that Polonius and Ophelia are convinced that Hamlet is mad, and that he is mad because he is in love with Ophelia and has been shut down by him. And so Polonius says that this is the very ecstasy of love in these lines. And Act 2, Scene 1, pretty early on in his discussion with Ophelia, she says that basically he showed up in her rooms and was just looking and acting quite strangely. These are those first lines. My lord, as I was sewing in my closet, Lord Hamlet with his doublet all unbraced, no hat upon his head, his stockings fouled and gartered and down jived to his ankle, pale as his shirt, his knees knocking each other, and with a look so piteous and purport as if he had been loosed out of hell to speak of horrors, he comes before me. And Polonius says, mad for my love, Ophelia, my lord, I do not know, but truly I do fear it. And then they continue on. And Polonius says, come and go with me. I will seek the king, because this is the very ecstasy of love. And we find out that she did repel his letters and denied his access to her, just as Polonius suggested. So they are thinking here that because Ophelia spurned him or shut down their relationship, that he is sort of overwrought with love. And we see this again repeated when Polonius goes and shares this information with Claudius and Gertrude. This is a little bit later in Act 2, Scene 2. In about line 92, Polonius says to the king and to Gertrude, your noble son is mad, and basically goes on to say that, it's because of Ophelia, and they need to set about kind of teasing this out to see if indeed this is true, that he is mad because of Ophelia's spurned love. So then we get a question that we need to always continue to roll around in our brains when we're thinking about, is Hamlet truly mad or insane here? And that's what I mean about madness. Is he faking it? And there's some evidence that perhaps he is. And we see in Act 2, Scene 2, through these lines, that he might be. So if you reread through those early lines where Hamlet and Polonius are interchanging, you can see that Hamlet is acting very, very erratic. But at the end of this, or sort of in the middle, Polonius makes an interesting aside, and these are in lines 202 and 203. Polonius says, though this be madness, yet there is method in it. And so maybe you've heard throughout your life someone say, well, there's method in her madness, or method in his madness, or method in my madness. Well, this is where it comes from. And so Polonius is starting to question here, even though he was pretty staunchly convinced that Hamlet was overwrought with, losing Ophelia, and he is acting erratically toward Polonius. Polonius wonders, does he know what he's doing here? Is he pretending in some kind of way? And then we see another question about Hamlet's true state of mind when he's talking to his friends, Rosencrantz and Guildenstern. Now, Rosencrantz and Guildenstern were Hamlet's friends who've been asked by the king and Gertrude to come and see if they can figure out what is going on with Hamlet and to make him feel better. So here are his buddies, trying to come to the rescue. So if we look at these lines, we can see them talking back and forth. And Hamlet says this. He has these pretty interesting lines at Act 2, Scene 2, starting in line 298. He says, what a piece of work is a man! How noble in reason, how infinite in faculties, in form and moving, how express and admirable in action, how like an angel in apprehension, how like a god, the beauty of the world, the paragon of animals. And yet to me, what is this quintessence of dust? Man delights not me, nor woman neither, though by your smiling you seem to say so. So here Hamlet is having this very philosophical conversation with Rosencrantz and Guildenstern about the place of man, humankind in the world, and an understanding that a person is just the quintessence of dust, or in other words, just dust and nothing more. That a person could be noble in reason, infinite in faculties, admirable in action, like an angel in understanding, the beauty of the world, the paragon of animals, could be held up to all these high esteems, but then he says, but we are really nothing but dust, and that nothing delights me. So again, you can read this in a couple of ways. Is he completely within all his faculties here because he's able to have this very philosophical conversation? Or is he truly melancholy and sad, and not necessarily mad or insane, but just truly sad? And then he says another interesting thing to Rosencrantz and Guildenstern. I am mad northwest. When the wind is southerly, I know a hawk from a handsaw. So then, again, that raises the question, is he indeed slipping in and out of madness? I'm mad when the wind blows this way, but I'm not when it blows the other way. Or is he faking it? Does he know what he's doing? And I think this is the question that this act really raises. Is Hamlet truly mad, or is there something else going on? And is that something else melancholy, and grief, as we touched on in Act 1? Excuse me. Or is it a combination of a bunch of things going on in Hamlet's brain? And so Claudius makes this statement, "Something have you heard of Hamlet's transformation, so call it. Sith nor the exterior nor the inward man resembles that it was." So he's completely different, in other words. "What should it be? More than his father's death that thus hath put him so much from the understanding of himself, I cannot deem of." So Claudius is curious. Hamlet seems to be overly distraught, outside of himself, a little unhinged / mad, so to speak. But what is it? Is it more than his father's death? He doesn't know. And so he's interested in finding out. And this is why he employs Rosencrantz and Guildenstern. And then Gertrude says, "I doubt it is no other but the main, his father's death and our o'er-hasty marriage." So Gertrude seems to think that Hamlet's behavior is nothing but grief and melancholy over his father's death, and then her very quick marriage to Claudius, which definitely could be the case. And then Hamlet makes these comments to Rosencrantz and Guildenstern. He says, "Denmark's a prison." And Rosencrantz said, "Then is the world one, Hamlet, a goodly one, in which there are many confines, wards, and dungeons, Denmark being one of the worst." Rosencrantz says, "Well, we think not so, my lord." And Hamlet says, "Why then 'tis none to you, for there is nothing either good or bad, but thinking makes it so. To me it is a prison." And so we get this real sense that he feels trapped, he feels confined, he feels bound to something he's got to do there, and we know what it is because of the ghost's charge. And so again, there's just some evidence here that what's going on with Hamlet is quite complicated. And then he actually says to Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, which these are very important pages, so you might want to look at them again. So Act 2, Scene 2, lines 291 and 292. "I have of late, but wherefore I know not, lost all my mirth, forgone all custom of exercises, and indeed it goes so heavily with my disposition, that this goodly frame, the earth seems to me a sterile promontory, this most excellent canopy, the air, look you, this brave o'erhanging firmament, this majestical roof fretted with golden fire, why it appeareth nothing to me but a foul and pestilent congregation of vapors." And then he goes on with what a piece of work is man, and basically saying, I think we're all just dust. So he admits here, "I've lost my mirth, I'm a little despondent and depressed." And then in his soliloquy, which is a super famous piece from this play that I do want you to watch the clip from, because I think you get a good flavor of what's going on with Hamlet in that clip here. He very much says that he is weak and he is melancholy. So as you're continuing to tease out for yourself what you think about Hamlet's state of mind, I want you to just sort of pay attention to these different places in the text as you're trying to formulate what you think. And understand what you think now after just 2 acts may change, and leave yourself open to that possibility. We know from his soliloquy that he is hesitant. And this is another important thread throughout the play, is why Hamlet delays in killing Claudius. And there's many reasons for that, and we'll tease them out as we go. But in this soliloquy, he gives maybe a good understanding, or a bit of an understanding, not only of that he is hesitant, but why he might be. And his hesitation really frustrates him in this soliloquy, starting on about line 535. He says, "Yet I, a dull and muddy-mettled rascal peak, like John a dreams, unpregnant of my cause, and can say nothing. No, not for a king upon whose property and most dear life a damned defeat was made, am I a coward." So he's like, I can't act here. I'm unpregnant of my cause. My cause of revenge, haven't been able to fulfill. Am I a coward? He asked that question. And then later down, he calls himself pigeon-livered and lacking gall. And he says, why, what an ass am I? This is most brave, that I, the son of a dear father murdered, prompted to my revenge by heaven and hell, must like a whore unpack my heart with words, and fall a-cursing like a very drab a scullion, fie upon it, foe, about my brains. I've heard that guilty creature sitting at a play, and then he goes on and talks about what he's going to do, which is present the play. But, basically he's like, I have this evidence from the ghost. Why am I delaying? Am I a coward? Am I an ass? Why am I not, doing what I'm supposed to be doing? And then he gives a reason at the very end. And he says, the spirit that I have seen may be a devil, and the devil hath power to assume a pleasing shape. Yea, and perhaps out of my weakness and my melancholy, as he is very potent with such spirits, abuses me to damn me. I'll have grounds more relative than this. The play's the thing, wherein I'll catch the conscience of the king. And so he indicates here that because he doesn't know whether the ghost is good or bad, evil or an angel, that he is going to have this little play performed, and through it try to see Claudius's reaction. And so he's going to ask the actors to put on a play in which they implicate a king of murdering his brother by pouring poison in the ear, which is exactly how Claudius kills his brother. And he's going to use that as evidence to decide whether or not Claudius is guilty. So maybe that's a reason for his hesitancy. He's unsure if the ghost is good or bad. And so that takes us back to the question of the ghost and the uncertainty here. Hamlet says, what a rough and peasant slave am I, at the beginning of the soliloquy. And clearly here he's indicating that he is a slave to the ghost, to taking revenge, to not being able to act, just trapped in that sense of, what should I do? And then these are the lines that I just read. The spirit that I have seen may be a devil, and the devil hath power to assume a pleasing shape. And remember back to that initial lecture, that people of this time period would have definitely believed that spirits were good or bad, and that they acted in the natural world with people, and that those people like Hamlet, who were melancholy or despondent, were more susceptible to evil spirits. And so he wonders if this ghost is abusing him to damn him. Because if he does commit murder, what will that mean? So again, just more uncertainty about whether this ghost is a good ghost or a bad ghost. And then finally, to pick up the politics thread, there's not much here in this act, but what is here is important. Claudius sends an emissary by the name of Voltimand to meet with young Fortinbras's uncle in Norway to tell him of Fortinbras's planned advances on Denmark. And the hope is that the uncle will stop Fortinbras. Well, he does. He's outraged and he orders Fortinbras to stop raising troops against Denmark and instead focus on Poland. He also gives him a quite a healthy sum of money too to stop that. But then the uncle asks for permission from Denmark, from Claudius, for Fortinbras to pass through Denmark on the way to Poland. Now this should raise all kinds of red flags, because you're going to ask for permission for a man who wants to take revenge on you to pass through your country with troops. Well, instead of being alarmed by this or adamantly opposed to it, Claudius says that at our more considered time we'll read, answer, and think upon its business. Meantime. And the meantime is he's so distracted by Hamlet and what is going on within his court that he doesn't have any space to be concerned about what's happening in the country. So this raises some significant questions about Claudius's focus and his fitness, if for a lack of a better word, to actually be king. So please let me know if you've got any questions about this act, and we will just continue to trace these threads and pick up a couple of more as we move through the rest of the play.